Hey everyone, we know how hard it can be to keep up with the latest news, so if you haven't had time to stay on top of what's what in the Holy Land with ILTV, have no worries. Stay tuned for our weekly review where we'll give you the scoop on the biggest stories that you may have missed in the last 7 days, right from Tel Aviv. I'm Aaron Porras, and thank you for joining us. Continuing concerns that the ruling government will collapse and fall back to early national elections were partially assuaged this morning after Abaya Yehudi party leaders Naftali Bennett and Ayelet Shaked announced that they will not be leaving the coalition. Bennett and Shaked originally threatened to drop out of the coalition last night, giving an ultimatum for the prime minister to either give Bennett the recently vacated position of defense minister or else face elections. But after what was likely a long night and morning of cabinet negotiations, the coalition will remain intact, albeit with just a 51% majority in the Knesset.
שוחחתי עם כל ראשי הקואליציה. אמרתי להם, זה הזמן לגלות אחריות. אל תפילו את הממשלה, ובייחוד, לא בעיתוי ביטחוני רגיש זה. יש לנו עוד שנה שלמה עד הבחירות. אנחנו בעיצומה של המערכה, ובאמצע המערכה לא נוטשים. באמצע המערכה לא משחקים בפוליטיקה. ביטחון המדינה הוא מעבר לפוליטיקה.
אם ראש הממשלה רציני בכוונותיו, ואני רוצה להאמין למילים שלו אמש, הרי שאני אומר כאן לראש הממשלה, אנחנו מסירים ברגע זה את כל דרישותינו הפוליטיות, ונתייצב לסייע לך במשימה אדירה זו שישראל תחזור לנצח.
Bennett has also now stated that he will, quote, stand by the prime minister's side, end quote, despite Netanyahu giving himself the defense ministership and dropping the foreign ministry position he had prior.
אני מניח שאני אשלם מחיר פוליטי מסוים בשעות הקרובות, בימים הקרובים. לא נורא, נתגבר. You win some, you lose some.
In at least a partial victory, though, Abaya Yehudi party member Eli Ben-Dahan, who was deputy defense minister under Lieberman, has been reinstated under Netanyahu. But what remains now is the appointment for Netanyahu's replacement as foreign minister. The Likud party stated that a decision would be made within the coming days, and regional cooperation minister Tzachi Hanegbi and energy minister Yuval Steinitz are widely considered to be the frontrunners for the job. But the decision needs to be made soon either way, as currently, aside from being prime minister, Netanyahu is the foreign affairs minister, the defense minister, the health minister, and the immigration absorption minister. Too many portfolios for any one man. In other news, 2 Argentinian citizens were arrested for suspected ties with Lebanon's Hezbollah terror group last Thursday, and this happened just days ahead of the 13th G20 summit that is set to take place in Buenos Aires at the end of the month. ILTV's correspondent Joy Gavijon is here with the details. So Joy, we know that there are many figures traveling to Argentina for the G20. Was there a risk? What exactly happened?
Thanks, Aaron. Yeah, so as you said, 2 men, actually 2 brothers, around the age of 23 and 25 were arrested by the federal police suspected of being linked with Hezbollah. And the complaint that led to this arrest was made by the umbrella organization of Argentina's Jewish community called DAIA. But now, according to the Defense Ministry, police found what we can describe as a small arsenal. They found many weapons, including a rifle, a shotgun, and some pistols. But that's not all, because they also discovered military clothes, suspicious electronic devices, evidence of travel abroad with credentials in Arabic, and more importantly, a big flag of Hezbollah and a picture of Hezbollah's leader, Hassan Nasrallah. I
see. So I'm assuming that that's why, the police suspect a connection with Hezbollah.
Exactly, and it's important to mention that Argentina has a history with Hezbollah. Most infamously, the terror group is accused of being responsible for the 1994 bombing terror attack on the AMIA Jewish Center in Buenos Aires that killed 85 people. So it's understandable, in my opinion, if they're taking this very seriously.
All right, now my question is again, were they planning something at the G20? Is there any relation there? What could the police find out other than many firearms?
Yes, so the thing is that when they were questioned by the judge, they denied every possible link. But police are still investigating to find out if the brothers traveled abroad to get some kind of military training from Hezbollah and if they were planning some sort of attack.
All right, well, I can only imagine that they'll keep looking into this, especially considering that the G20 summit, International Leadership Summit, is around the corner, and they need to keep security at an absolute maximum.
Yeah, for sure. The investigation will keep going on, I'm sure about that. This is the first time a South American country is hosting the summit, and many important world leaders are going to be there, including President Trump, Vladimir Putin, Emmanuel Macron, and so of course they want to assure their safety.
All right, well, I hope the investigation is thorough, fair, and swift, and I hope you come back with any updates in the story. In the meantime, thanks for your report, Joy.
Of course, Aaron.
Additional details have now come out in the two major investigations against Israeli government officials Aryeh Deri and David Keyes. Keyes, who served as Prime Minister Netanyahu's foreign media spokesman, will now be resigning from his post, according to Channel 2 News, following sexual misconduct accusations made in September by at least 10 women. Keyes continues to deny any wrongdoing in the allegations, which go back years before he was appointed, but he still agreed to resign from his media position in return for the Civil Service Commission's closing of the investigation against him. As for Interior Minister Aryeh Deri, the Shas party leader and coalition member was recommended for indictments by police this week on charges of fraud, breach of trust, obstruction of court proceedings, making false statements to the Speaker of the Knesset, money laundering, and tax offenses regarding the withholding of nearly 2 million shekels from tax authorities. The police say their evidence shows criminal actions in land purchases and sales, in dealings with businessman Ilan Sharabi, and even with tampering evidence, among other things. And the allegations span a wide range of time, including both before and after his appointment to the Interior Ministry. In fact, in order to complete investigations into more recent suspicions, police have split the charges into two different investigations, one which is now ongoing. Now, if indicted and found guilty, this would be the second time that Deri will have been convicted of corruption as Interior Minister. Deri first went to prison in 2000 for 22 months after being convicted of taking bribes while serving as Interior Minister in the 1990s. And after his release, it was almost a decade before he returned to politics, where he was then reappointed as Interior Minister by Prime Minister Netanyahu. According to a Palestinian Judicial Council memo posted yesterday, a Palestinian Authority court in the West Bank has just sentenced 2 Palestinians to 15 years of hard labor for, quote, leaking land to the enemy, aka selling property to Jews. Palestinian law considers selling land or attempting to sell land to an Israeli Jew as treasonous and severely punishable, and possible sentences for this so-called crime vary from years of hard labor all the way to execution. Having said that, though, the law required the PA President Mahmoud Abbas to approve any death sentences personally, which has not been done since 2006. Hassan al-Aruri, Abbas's former legal advisor, explained that, quote, the president does not approve execution sentences, end quote. Regarding this case, though, there are still neither details regarding who the land was sold to, nor how and when, but Palestinian officials and religious leaders both have been heavily against selling land to Israeli Jews, no matter the circumstance. Last April, a PA court handed down the same sentence to another individual suspected of selling lands to Israelis, and the former Grand Mufti of Jerusalem was quoted just last week saying any Palestinian who sells land to a Jew is a, quote, traitor and a perpetrator of a crime that cannot be forgiven, end quote. All right, international home renting company Airbnb Incorporated is making waves today after announcing Monday that it would remove listings put up in Israeli settlements in the West Bank. So far, the decision affects around 200 listings, and while Palestinians were ecstatic about the news and hailed this as a step towards peace, Israel called it a, quote, wretched capitulation to boycotters. Airbnb has already noted, though, that it had apparently thoroughly thought out the pros and cons of the situation before coming to a decision, and in their statement they wrote, quote, we know that people will disagree with this decision and appreciate their perspective. This is a controversial issue. There are many strong views as it relates to lands that have been the subject of historic and intense disputes between Israelis and Palestinians in the West Bank, end quote. But they continued to say that while they hope for peace, as of now they have a global duty to act responsibly, and this is the decision they came to. Israeli right-wing lawmakers, however, immediately urged settler homeowners to take legal action against Airbnb and threatened to limit the organization's operations in Israel as punishment as well. Strategic Affairs Minister Gilad Erdan said he planned to speak with senior U.S. officials, too, to see if the move violated American laws against Israeli boycotts that exist in 25 out of the 50 states. And former Israeli ambassador to the United States, M.K. Michael Oren, further said, quote, Airbnb blacklists Jewish apartments in Judea and Samaria, not Palestinian apartments, not apartments in Turkish-occupied Cyprus, not in Moroccan-occupied Sahara, not in Tibet or the Crimea. Airbnb's policy is the very definition of anti-Semitism. Due to, quote, persistent and egregious bias against Israel, Israel and the United States pulled out of UNESCO, the United Nations' culture and heritage organization. And then just earlier this year, Prime Minister Netanyahu declined an invitation from UNESCO to attend their conference on anti-Semitism, saying that UNESCO must do more than host a conference, it must stop practicing anti-Semitism too.
Well, it seems the world body is making great efforts to do just that, as it's just launched a website dedicated to fighting Holocaust denial and anti-Semitism. UNESCO paired up with the World Jewish Congress on the project, and earlier this week in Paris revealed the new interactive Facts About the Holocaust site. UNESCO has also previously published the UN's first guidelines on fighting anti-Semitism worldwide, and now with this website hopes to eliminate the, quote, increased hate and disinformation online, end quote, regarding Jews and related topics. Facts About the Holocaust features a wealth of resources, including facts, of course, as well as witness and survivor testimonies, short descriptions and analyses, news, and much more. It's also paired directly with the online Holocaust Encyclopedia hosted by the United States' Holocaust Memorial Museum. So there's plenty to find, and all this and more is why now some Israeli officials are actually even rethinking their decision to leave the organization. The United States has just made headlines at the United Nations again on Friday after rejecting for the first time a United Nations General Assembly resolution demanding that Israel return the Golan Heights to Syria. The call to return the Golan is made often, and this weekend it was brought up again along with 8 other resolutions condemning Israel for various alleged crimes against the Palestinians. But while the United States typically abstains from these votes, this time a decisive choice was announced.
Israel captured the Golan Heights during the 1967 Six-Day War and annexed it afterwards. The international community largely condemns this annexation, and the United States shared the same view, but refrained from demanding Israel return it out of security concerns. And now, United States Ambassador to the UN Nikki Haley went one step further by, quote, addressing the elephant in the room, end quote. She said the United States will no longer abstain when the UN engages in its useless annual vote on the Golan Heights. Quote, if this resolution ever made sense, it surely doesn't today. She continued that not only is the resolution biased against Israel, but, quote, the atrocities the Syrian regime continues to commit prove its lack of fitness to govern anyone. The destructive influence of the Iranian regime inside Syria presents major threats to international security. ISIS and other terrorist groups remain in Syria, and this resolution does nothing to bring any parties closer to a peace agreement, so the United States will vote no, end quote. Syrian officials claimed the decision is further evidence that the United States is no longer the Middle East mediator it suggests itself to be, but that nevertheless it was not a surprising result. The resolution in the end totaled 151 votes in favor to 2 against, 14 abstentions.
All right, back in August, we reported on a young woman who was diagnosed with leukemia just 2 months before her wedding day. And as you might imagine, the discovery of her illness understandably put all the wedding plans on hold. But that's when a grassroots effort began in order to help find a rare bone marrow match for the bride-to-be. And now we are happy to share the good news that Roni Cohen reportedly received her life-saving transplant from her brother and is now recovering well.
Roni Cohen captured the nation's heart when she was diagnosed with leukemia, leading thousands of people to line up and get tested to see if they were the perfect match for Cohen's marrow. But after 16,000 people tried and failed to match her marrow type, Cohen's older brother ended up being her last lifeline. Now you may be thinking, if her brother was able to donate, why test 16,000 people? Well, Roni had AML, which is a specific type of leukemia that attacks a patient's bone marrow. This is a fairly rare form of the disease and has a somewhat low survival rate, though, because it typically requires an infusion of HSCs, or stem cells that help us create blood and are taken from bone marrow. Making things even more difficult, the stem cells must be a complete match to have a shot at a successful transfusion. While Roni's older brother is only a 50% match, but was chosen in the end anyway after the failure to find something better. His transfusion was reportedly carried out 6 weeks ago using a method that still enables him to be a donor, though, albeit a more risky one. Still, a report states that Cohen's initial test results have all been normal and that a month and a half later she's back at home recovering from the process. Of course, doctors will continue to monitor her progress and she will undergo further testing in the future, but as of now, we are happy to see that Roni is safe and sound, and we are all proud of all the efforts made by the citizens of the Holy Land.
In other news, passengers from last Thursday's hellish El Al Flight 002 are now demanding monetary compensation from the airline, along with an apology, claiming El Al lied to them, causing monetary damages and distress.
Last Thursday, Flight 002 from New York to Tel Aviv was severely delayed due to a series of unfortunate events, causing major upset to religious passengers and the flight staff alike. Attorneys Tamar Falk and Amit Haddad, who represent the 180 religious plaintiffs, have already sent a letter to El Al, though, demanding a public statement that none of the passengers had been violent, as El Al previously claimed, and that the company promised to return the passengers' money in addition to damages amounting to 50,000 shekels per person. After Flight 002 was severely delayed by tardy flight crew and poor planning, religious passengers requested that they be allowed to deplane so as not to violate the Sabbath. To calm the passengers down, the pilot announced he would indeed go back to the gate, but then he took off, eventually landing in Athens in order to touch down as soon as possible. El Al explained initially that the issues arose when, quote, a group of Haredim requested to get off the plane and exercised heavy and violent pressure against the cabin crew, end quote, in seeking to disembark. But several videos posted later have surfaced and none demonstrated any violence from the passengers, only loud arguments with the cabin crew. The pilot on the flight then later claimed that a rabbi on board allowed the takeoff, but other passengers have since denied both the pilot's claim and the rabbi in question's authority.
Amidst rising tensions between Israel and Jordan following Amman's announcement not to renew a 25-year-old land lease, a Jordanian delegation has now arrived in the Jewish state to request a larger allocation of fresh water.
Israel already sets aside roughly 50 million cubic meters of freshwater annually for the Hashemite kingdom, but both Jordan and Israel have been suffering under heavy drought for nearly 6 full years. Well, the meeting to review this issue and look at other related international agreements took place on Monday between Israel and Jordan officials on a joint water scarcity committee. And according to early reports, Jordan's request for more freshwater above the 50 million cubic meters now only has to go through Energy Minister Yuval Steinitz of the Likud for approval. From Israel's side, Steinitz then reportedly requested permission for drilling operations in the Arava Desert around the Dead Sea Basin and adjacent to the Jordanian border. Time will tell if this back and forth can lead to stronger ties, though, or further divisions. The large consensus on both sides right now is that while the peace treaty is not at risk, affection for the other is practically non-existent. Aside from disagreements over the handling of Jerusalem, Gaza, and the West Bank, Jordan last month also announced it would not renew lease agreements along the border with Israel for agricultural use. And while this is not a violation in any way of the peace agreement between the two countries, it is largely viewed as a step towards a crumbling relationship.
An early depiction of Jesus has now just been revealed in a 6th century Byzantine church. The discovery comes out of the ancient village of Shifta in the south of Israel and was made by Dr. Emma Ma'ayan Fanor from Haifa University.
The faint painting of Jesus shows a youth with short curly hair, a prolonged face, and an elongated nose, and admittedly the image is so faint that to the untrained eye you'd likely miss it entirely. To most, the lines captured in the image look somewhat like iron stains often found after a desert rain. So for the sake of the report, Dr. Mayan Fanar generated a penciled reconstruction over the photograph taken by her husband, and it indeed portrays a portrait of a young man. Still, Dr. Fanar said that she had help from a combination of conditions to make the discovery. The researcher said that during her last visit to the church, she found herself under the image on an apse by chance. Quote, I was under the apse at the right place at the right time. It's just so hidden, it's impossible to see, but the conditions of the light were just right, end quote. The Shifta area is a popular site for archaeological excavations, and findings suggest a strong Christian community existed there for hundreds of years.
In recent years, more and more people are choosing to leave their busy city lifestyles for a more simple, relaxing atmosphere. And in fact, in the past 10 years alone, the Israeli population just in southern cities has doubled, making huge advancements in high tech, agriculture, and more along the way. Well, ILTV's Natalie Tversky recently paid the South a visit in her weekly travel program, Cruisin Israel, and she joins us here now with more. So, Natalie, what's the story?
Hey, Aaron. So on this week's show, Max and I explored the south of Israel and all of its wonders, and specifically the Arava Desert. Now, I know that Israel's center is the go-to for most people during their travels, but the Arava is a whole experience in itself.
All right, so what did you see?
Well, as I said, if you catch the show, you'll see all the different towns and moshavim we got to go to, the beautiful desert landscapes, and more. We also checked out a bunch of greenhouses and learned all about how people are actually succeeding in making the desert bloom.
Which is amazing, I must say, because, I don't know about the last time you tried to plant something in the sand, but it's really hard, so I'm very impressed.
Yeah, definitely. Well, in places like these, miracles are happening every single day.
All right, well, I'm very excited. Let's take a look at the clip.
Agriculture is just one of the major industries that Israel excels at, and the bulk of it all is happening in some of the country's driest lands.
The agricultural moshav of En Yahav in Israel's central Arava is the oldest and largest in the region. Here is where 60% of Israel's fresh vegetable export originates and is home to 160 greenhouses, all filled with vegetables such as peppers, melons, pumpkins, and even 40 varieties of tomatoes.
This is where most of the money comes from in the Arava, growing those amazing peppers and selling them around the world. Good, right?
Very crunchy.
Oh my gosh, that footage looks gorgeous, Natalie. It looks like you must have had a lot of fun.
Definitely, and those were some of the tastiest peppers I've ever had. So you guys have to go check it out. They invite visitors to not only learn about the process of growing veggies in the desert, but also they allow you to pick some yourself.
All right, well, this is making me very hungry, so I'll see you there, Natalie.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for coming in, and everyone at home, make sure you catch the rest of Cruising Israel with our world-famous cameraman, Max Fetterman, and of course, the very talented Natalie Tursky. Natalie, thank you. And now let's turn to ILTV's Emmanuel Kadosh for this week's Top 5.
So if you haven't been able to tell by now, my favorite topic to talk about is food. And Israel has one of the best culinary scenes in the world. We've told you about the upscale restaurants, best cafes, best breakfast spots, and now I'm here to give you guys ILTV's Top 5 list of the best street food in Tel Aviv. First on the list is Miznon, and just to prove how amazing this spot is, they even opened a branch in Chelsea Market in New York City. Miznon can be described best as gourmet fast food opened up by famous Israeli chef Eyal Shani. This is the spot to be for a good steak and egg in a pita or a whole cauliflower that will literally melt in your mouth. But you can't forget about the atmosphere, which makes the whole place what it is. Prepare to get a little messy because the food is too delicious to be careful. Second up is Arepas, located in Tel Aviv's Shuka Carmel or the Carmel Market, and is run by Venezuelans who bring a little taste of home to the streets of Tel Aviv. An arepa is similar to a pancake from corn flour and can be filled with cheese, meat, guac, and beans. This stand serves quick, delicious food at an amazing price, and you'll honestly never taste anything like it. Third on the list is the newest shop called Nu Dirty Dining. And let me tell you, dirty dining is an understatement at this spot. Chef Guy Gamzo's latest spot offers everything you'd ever dream of in a delicious bun, ranging from mac and cheese to a bun with barbecue chicken and everything in between. It's the latest craze in Tel Aviv, so you don't want to miss out. Fourth up is Eat Meat, which offers an Argentinian-inspired sandwich with a freshly baked bun filled with out-of-this-world shredded entrecôte and delicious sauces. Or, if you're trying to watch the carbs, they offer everything that's in the sandwich on a bed of lettuce. I'm making myself hungry just thinking about it. Last but never least is Pitos, bringing Greek street food to the heart of Tel Aviv, offering the best Greek flavors in pita, ranging from gyros, grilled kebabs, all the way to vegan zucchini balls. So if you're looking for a mixed Israeli-Greek experience, make sure to check out Pitos real quick. That's all for today's Top 5. Back to you.
All right, that's it for this week's weekly review. Remember to follow us on Facebook for more news at Israel English News, and of course on Twitter at ILTV News. I'm Aaron Porras. Thank you for watching.